The month of Av is a time of strict justice, where we see justice is being released and corrections are being made. And sometimes we think, oh God, this is judgment, or oh, this is the absence of the Father, or oh, we feel abandoned. But what I want to encourage you to do in this season is to shift your perspective and say, how can I see that these hard things that we are walking through, maybe as a family or in the world or in circumstances around you, that this is a divine correction? Why? Because God is positioning you for a better and a brighter future. But during this season, you're going to more than likely experience the tension of correction. But what is your perspective of that? Like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the negative side or the potential for opportunity? Hey, I'm Megann Marcellino, and I want to welcome you back to Generations at the Table. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat with me. Today, we're going to jump right in, and I want to talk to you about the Hebrew month of Av. And I know I've mentioned this before, but one of my passions about understanding the Hebrew months and the biblical months is how can I make choices and decisions, create habits and patterns that are in alignment and are in sync with God's calendar and just like the cycle that we see every year. And so it really helps me feel grounded. It helps me feel at peace. And I don't look at this as an obligation or something that is like kind of like mysterious, like, like this is not like, astrology or something, but this is like saying, okay, I see God move in seasons. I see his invitation. I see his opportunity. I see his pattern. And therefore, how can I because I am made in his image, how can I make decisions that align with that and that reflect the patterns of God and are in sync with that and not opposing forces? So the month of Av is challenging, and I can just be fully transparent and say sometimes this season comes and I feel like a bit of dread. Even a few weeks ago, I told Paul, I said, man, I feel the tension of this moment. I feel us moving into this season. But why is that? So on the 9th of Av, a lot of really challenging things happened. And I can speak to you more about that as we move on in this conversation. But it's basically two of the biggest things it was that day that marked the destruction of the first and the second temple. And so it is a period of mourning. It is a period of grief. It is a period of heaviness. And yet, at the end, what do we see? We see the God of comfort. We see the God of covenant. We see the God who restores. So there is hope at the end. But as we walk through this season, how do we make those decisions that bring us into a place of alignment, blessing, and covenant restoration? One of the things I think is really interesting is the Hebrew word Av is the Hebrew word for, it means father. And so we see the Father, we see his comfort, we see his consistency. We see his covenant presence in our lives, even in these moments of challenge. And the other thing that we can really take during this month and this season is that we are in the preparatory days of preparing our hearts for the fall feast and the high holy days. And I know that it may seem early, but are you sensing it in your spirit? Because I know that I am. My heart is full of expectation of, Lord, what are you going to do at Rosh Hashanah? How are you going to awaken us? What is he going to do and cleanse us from during those days of awe, bringing us into Yom Kippur and that experience of atonement and repentance and new beginnings? And then at Sukkot, when we renew our covenant with the Lord and we yield to that surrendering of, I am in relationship with you and you have something for me. Like God has something so amazing for us every fall feast season, but these are those preparatory days and it's a time of introspection. And sometimes introspection is painful. And sometimes introspection feels yucky. Like you're looking inside yourself and it's like a bruise or a wound where you feel like God is putting pressure on something, but he's not putting pressure on it to hurt you. He's putting pressure on it to draw your attention to an opportunity to get healed. An opportunity of a place that maybe you didn't even know that existed. It's like, I didn't even know I was sore here, but it's because of something we haven't let go. And this is the beginning, the very beginning days of letting things go so that we can walk in the fullness of the goodness of the Father and what he has for us. So sometimes I think we get confused and justice feels like judgment when really justice is a correction. And it's not like God is punishing us. He is correcting things in the system. And so the month of Av is a time of strict justice where we see justice is being released and corrections are being made. And sometimes we think, oh God, this is judgment, or oh, this is the absence of the Father, or oh, we feel abandoned. But what I want to encourage you to do in this season is to shift your perspective and say, how can I see that these hard things that we are walking through, maybe as a family or in the world or in circumstances around you, that this is a divine correction? Why? Because God is positioning you for a better and a brighter future. But during this season, you're going to more than likely experience the tension of correction. But what is your perspective of that? Like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the negative side or the potential for opportunity? We talked about this a couple weeks ago, was that this is a season of opportunity where you can either lean in to what God is doing or you can pull back. So the opportunity is to either press forward in your calling, to unlock your kingdom destiny, to advance the kingdom, or to fall back into bad habits and patterns. So the opportunity is there. That tipping point is there. And the opportunity of choice is ours because we have that freedom of will. Micah 6:8 says this, He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? And Isaiah 1:17 says this, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Those are all things that we do at Kurt Landry Ministries. Those are all things that we are passionate about. But what are we passionate about? We are passionate about doing justly. We are passionate about seeking justice. And what struck me about those when I was studying was those are actions. Justice is not a feeling. It is something that we seek, that we go after, that we are proactive in. And that is what we are passionate about, is that transformation process, that when God does something inside of us, when He begins to unlock our identity as sons and as daughters, that we begin acting as sons and daughters of the King. And when we are sons and daughters of the King, we live with a heart that is pressed into justice. And it's not this like social justice, it's the justice of the Lord and the righteousness of the Lord. Destruction happens in the month of Av. We see that with the temple, but this is it's a contention for and a contending for what God has that is best for us. It is a repositioning. It is a tension that creates something that is better. And so when we see the Lord stripping away, we can trust that He is going to restore, that He is going to replace back with. The Hebrew word for justice is sadiq, which is righteousness. So when the word says seek first righteousness, we are seeking first justice. So we're seeking so much what the month of Av has to offer us, but sometimes it comes in pressure and sometimes it comes in tension. And what is beautiful is that our Father is faithful, and He says, you're going to go through this season of tension. You're going to go through a time of contending for what God has for you, the best that He has for you, but I am going to comfort you. I am going to restore you. So there is both mourning and there is both comfort in this month. One of the things that you see happen is the history. Like there was wars started, there were revolts started, there was expulsions that began on the 9th of Av, but also the first temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av, and the second temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. So this is a period of tremendous mourning. But what do we know as believers? That we have been called to be the temples of the Holy Spirit. So when these temples were destroyed, it was like their national identity. It was their place of center of worship. It was their place of community. It represented the Jewish nation as a whole. So you can imagine how lost they must have felt, how abandoned they must have felt. Have you ever felt lost? Have you ever felt abandoned? I can tell you that there have been definite moments in my life where I have felt abandoned, and I have felt like, God, you must have let go, or I must have done something wrong, or there's a separation. But He was always right there. He was always right beside me. The Holy Spirit was always in me to carry me through. And what happened was when I could let go of those experiences, I could see that He was always there. His hand never left. His love never left. His guidance never left. I just wasn't feeling it. But when I came out the other side of it, I was refined and I was able to see His faithfulness. And it, instead of pushing me away from Him, it drew me closer. Because just because you don't feel something doesn't mean that it's not happening. And sometimes we lean and rely too much on our emotions and how we feel about our circumstances. And God was like, I was always right there. I was always offering you comfort. I was always offering you guidance, even if you don't feel it in the moment. So in the month of Av, I think it's really important that we have to ask ourselves, how can we align our lives with what God is doing? And how can we align our habits and patterns so that when this strict justice is coming down the pike, how are we going to be receiving it? Because see, justice is a friend for those who desire right standing with God. That is something that Rabbi always reiterates to us. Is justice and judgment, those are friends to you if you desire right standing with God. Because you think about it like this. This is how he explained it to me. If you're in a court case and you are on the right side of things, you are looking forward to the judgment being rendered in your favor. So judgment is a good thing when it positions us for the future that God has for us. It's not something to always, be feared. So ask yourselves these questions as you're going through the month of Av. Does your financial stewardship honor the Lord? And if it does, then your finances should be protected in this season of tension. Does your time honor the Lord? Do you honor the Lord with, being in the Word and in worship? Are you honoring the Sabbath? Are you honoring the feasts of the Lord? All of those are opportunities for us to honor God with our time and our focus. And during these seasons, we should be protected. Do your habits reflect reverence for your body as the temple of God? Are you honoring God with your body? These are ways that we can protect ourselves when judgment is coming, when there is seasons of strict justice. We're saying, no, I'm doing these things right. I'm doing these things in alignment. And then is your parenting, is your leadership, are those roles in your life rooted in faith, or are they rooted in a place of fear? How are you loving? How are you leading in your home? How are you loving and leading for yourself? Those are other areas. So when we are making decisions, and God is not seeking perfection, but I do think he is seeking hearts that desire to be aligned with his, that desire to reflect him. And when we are doing those things, then we are living in alignment and on the right side. And so when there are seasons of strict justice, the judgment is being rendered in our favor. And it's saying, hey, these are my people. They are called, they are chosen, they are dedicated, they are living in faith, they are living in covenant alignment. So during the month of Av, you may be tempted to lean into the mourning. Like the Israelites, they were mourning the first and second temple and all of the things that happened. Like we can lean into those emotions, but this is an opportunity for us to shift our focus and say, I am not going to lose sight of the bigger picture. I am not going to lose sight of what God is doing. And although I may witness destruction on every side, and although I may be witnessing some really hard things, I'm going to lean into the faithfulness of the Father. Because right after Tish B'Av, right after the 9th of Av, there comes a Shabbat that what is in English is called the Shabbat of comfort. And it's like immediately God begins to bring comfort. Because after this repositioning, he's like, I am going to comfort you. I am going to draw your heart close to mine. I am going to show you mercy. But you have to stay in it until you can begin to see that light at the end of the tunnel. So Micah 6:8, which I read earlier, is he has shown you, oh man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. In this season, I would ask you, are you living in accordance with that? Are you living in alignment with justice? Are you doing these things? Are you seeking his heart? Because those are ways that we can protect our minds and our spirits in these moments of tension, in these moments of pressure. I don't know what you're going through right now. I don't know what your life looks like. I know for us personally, our life and our phones have been a constant alarm of actual literal life and death situations for the last few weeks. It has just been one thing after another that we are watching people that we love, people that we know go through. And what are we doing? Well, we're just saying, okay, I know this is the season. I recognize that this is a moment of pressure, but I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get fearful. I am going to activate faith. This is a season where you're going to have to dig deep into all of those things that you've been investing in yourself this year. And you're going to have to find the truth as your anchor. And you're going to have to find that this is where I'm going to put my footing. This is where I'm going to put my faith. I am not going to look to the left. I'm not going to look to the right. I am not going to detour because see, that's what the enemy wants to do. He wants to sabotage us with fear. And he wants to sabotage us with saying, these are my taunts. This is what I want to do, because all of these things feel scary and foreboding. But the Lord is saying, are you going to lean into me and my faithfulness in the midst of destruction, in the midst of correction, in the midst of divine alignment of whatever the Lord is doing? And no matter how any of these situations pan out, I'm going to lean into you. I'm going to lean into the fatherhood of God. I don't know what your relationship was like with your dad. I have a really good relationship with my dad, and he's been very faithful in my life. But you can't allow those natural relationships with fathers that maybe wasn't in a good place to reflect what the Lord is doing in this season right now, because he is inviting you to lean into his faithfulness, because you serve a father who shows up. You serve a father who is faithful. You serve a father who always does what he says. You serve a father who is loving. You serve a father who is generous. And if you didn't have that in the natural, that may be really hard to connect with. That may be really hard to see. How can I see you as my father when my father did X, Y, Z? My father was abusive. My father was mean. My father never showed up when he said he would. All of those things in the natural, it's a reflection of how we feel. But God is saying, I am the father that you see in the word. I am the father that is consistent. And he is inviting us to lean into that in this season, to have a deeper relationship with him, so that we go into the fall feast from that place of introspection, and we've allowed him to remove those things in our life that challenge those beliefs, that challenge those mindsets, that challenge the limiting. So here's the challenge today for us, okay? Are you asking the right questions? Am I asking the right questions? When you see these things on either side of you, destruction, hard things, tensions, misalignments, ask the right questions. Don't ask, oh God, why? In that place of bitterness or that place of whining. Don't ask that. Ask God, what would you have me learn from this situation? How can I reposition my heart? What can I change? What can I do? What are you asking of me? Ask the right questions, not the whiny ones. And I know that sounds hard, but that's the truth, because sometimes we just want to whine in the situation. No, God's saying, ask me the right questions, and he's going to show you the answer. And the answer is going to reposition you for blessing, and it's going to align you for what he has for you. And are you living in fear of justice? Or are you living in faith that God has your best interest at heart? And that whatever he is stripping away, whatever he is pulling away, he is going to replace and restore with something better. It's okay to mourn the loss of what was, but it's not okay to stay there. It's okay to say, I'm grieving this passing of this season, of this whatever it is, but it's not okay to stay there. We have to have a mindset of hope and faith for a future. And then how can you create visual reminders of something that you can see the goodness of God, and you can remember the goodness of God and his faithfulness to you? I was recently reading something about the 10 Commandments, and it struck me. It said that the 10 Commandments, kind of like the month of Av, have a duality, right? We talked about the month of Av being strict justice, and yet we see mercy, judgment, and yet we see comfort. Well, the 10 Commandments, they were for the nation of Israel at that time to say, this is how you are to live, and this is how God was conveying his instruction. But they were also for the generations to follow, that the generations that follow would be able to look back and see the instruction of God as well. So they were for the then, and they were for the now. They were for the present, and they were for the future. And so for us, how can we see that in the month of Av is that there is some duality. There is this and there is that. There is on one hand and there is on the other. But we got to align ourselves so that we can see not only what God has done, but what God is doing. And setting up those visual reminders, something that says, hey, I'm going to lean into the faithfulness of God. I'm going to see this, and it's going to remind me. Maybe it's a Post-it note with a scripture. Maybe it's a book. What is it that there's something that reminds you? I was thinking these necklaces. I have a few necklaces like this that I wear. Paul has bought me a necklace for each baby that was born. And when I put on their necklace, I think about them. Where today I'm wearing Matthew and I'm wearing Willow. And I think about them. And it's so sweet because Joseph knows which necklace is his, and he'll say, why aren't you wearing my necklace? And I'll tell him, I can't wear all the necklaces all the time, but he recognizes that. But they remind me of my children. So set something visual that reminds you of what God is doing, whether it is a piece of jewelry, or it is a picture, or it's a book, or it's a Post-it, something that triggers your brain. And you say, oh yeah, I'm going to remember the faithfulness of God. Because in the month of Av, there can be tension and there can be hard places. but God is faithful and He is going to bring you through. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat with me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you will join us again next week, same time, same place.